What's up, everybody? And today we're checking out SEAL Team 6 Smoked These Pirates. Jessica Buchanan, hostage rescue. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. This is by Brothers in Arms. I will leave a link down below to the OG video. Make sure you go over there, give it some love, all that good stuff. This should be an interesting video. I've been sent this a couple times, so we'll see how it goes. I am a little bit sick, guys. I'm not going to lie. That's why there was no video yesterday. So we'll see if I get through this video. Also, if you haven't already, check out Chug, my new channel sponsor, made in Britain. These incredible, what do you call it, a tanker? Is that what you call them? A tanker? A big mug. A big mug. It's bigger than a Sports Direct mug. If you know, you know. It's really good. Link down below. Go check them out. Anyways, for now, let's shut up. Let's pull this up and let's have a cheeky peek.
The Navy SEALs clenched their fists as they heard Jessica Buchanan desperately pleading
Buchanan. Okay.
for her life. The American teacher had participated in a demining project in Somalia before being kidnapped by several pirates.
I got my head up here because I had subtitles in the last video, which actually I'm going to do that again. I'm going to put subbies on again for people, and I'll move my head up a little bit just in case subtitles pop up. Okay, guys? Put it right here.
Now she lay sick and starving somewhere in the desert, defenseless against the whims of her heavily armed captors. The operators of the famous SEAL Team 6 would do everything to save her. But one bad piece of news followed the next. Gale force winds would force the sailors to jump out of the aircraft at more than twice the wind speeds of what would have normally canceled the jump.
I mean,
on top of that, they were in
the special forces for a reason, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? They're going to get the job done no matter what. I moved my head
middle
back
of a
down.
solar storm, which could
I moved my head back down here because the subbies aren't even close to the camera.
wind speeds of what would have normally canceled the jump. On top of that, they were in the middle of a solar storm, which could block radio communications to support units for hours. The SEALs would have to prove that they were among the best before they even touched the ground.
Yeah.
Any other mission would have been delayed by at least a day. But the warriors knew Jessica didn't have those 24 hours. And so they donned their parachutes, checked their oxygen tanks, and then jumped into the unknown darkness. And one of the
Good on them for doing this. Like, holy shit.
most daring hostage rescues ever.
Holy.
Jessica Buchanan was 32 years old and living with her husband in one of the safer areas of Somalia. Together with her Danish colleague, Paul Thisted, she worked for a large aid organization, educating children about the dangers of anti-personnel mines that were widespread throughout the country.
So overall, a really good person that unfortunately got mixed in with all this crap.
On her next assignment, she had to travel dangerously close to the so-called Green Line, an invisible line behind which lay the areas controlled by Islamists. The security situation in the Horn of Africa was already tense as it was, with bomb attacks and small skirmishes between rival tribes occurring almost regularly. However, Jessica had not come to Africa to hide behind walls, so
It takes some guts to be that type of person, doesn't it? To leave the confines of your safe country to go to one just to help people. They're a different breed of people. They're just, they move the line of kindness, don't they? To even extremes that the average person just can't get to. No wonder the SEALs wanted to get her out. Incredible.
she decided to conduct the anti-mine training anyway. At first, everything seemed to go without incident. But on October 25th, 2011, the day of their return trip, everything was about to change for the two humanitarian workers. The first thing that struck Jessica as suspicious was her driver. Instead of their usual chauffeur, a completely unknown man was sitting in the Land Cruiser who was supposed to take them to the airport.
It's always Toyotas, isn't it? What do they say? When the war kicks off, Toyota's shares go through the roof because they're so robust that everybody drives them. Look how many Toyotas are in that picture. Do you know what I mean?
Her Danish colleague, however, seemed to be in a hurry and climbed into the passenger seat unimpressed, which is why Jessica stopped worrying. Then, after only 10 minutes of driving, it happened. A massive car forced the convoy to an abrupt halt. Nearly 30 men with AK-47 assault rifles jumped out of several vehicles, banging on the
Sheesh.
Land Cruiser's windows and yelling orders in a language Jessica didn't understand. Before
Can you imagine how terrifying that is for a civilian? As someone who was in the military, you're prepared for things like that to happen. But for a civilian, for that to happen, it's very traumatizing. I mean, it's traumatizing for anyone, but still, you get what I'm saying, right?
She could even realize what was happening to her. One of the pirates pointed his gun to her head while her security advisor was violently dragged from the vehicle. A heavily armed man sat down in the vacant seat and gave orders to Jessica's driver, who willingly hit the gas and showed who he was really working for. It wasn't long before they stopped again and switched vehicles amid loud shouting from the pirates. The whole thing seemed very well planned, although the kidnappers had obviously consumed too much khat, a plant common in Africa which acts similar to amphetamines.
I've never heard of that before at all. Never heard of that. That's super interesting. So they were really like buzzed up. Oh, that's almost more terrifying because you just don't know if they're like right of mind and if they do something bad. Like when people point a gun at you, all it takes is for like a nudge or a slip or a sneeze or an itch, something. Oh, rhymes. I'm a poet, aren't I? All it takes is something little for him to accidentally pull that trigger.
After the pirates stopped in the middle of nowhere, Jessica and Paul had to prepare their own execution, only to be sent back to the car just before their tragic end.
Oh my God.
The pirates didn't care at all about the lives of the relief workers, but in order to collect the highest possible ransom, they needed their hostages unharmed. For them, it was fun to mock the powerlessness of the West on the other side of the world. Jessica and Paul
I feel like that's a very common thing these days, isn't it? To mock the West. It's very easy to mock the West because we don't really do anything about it until they touch the US boats. If they touch US boats, then they'll certainly do something about it.
While we're living their nightmare. They could do nothing, as they were at the mercy of the barbarians and didn't even know if anyone had noticed their disappearance.
Ugh.
But Washington was not only aware of the abduction of the humanitarian workers, it had already initiated first countermeasures. Jessica's aid organization had notified the American embassy in Nairobi immediately after the assault, which in turn informed the FBI. From here, phone calls were made to family members to reassure them and dissuade them from acting rashly. Even before the end of the day, high-ranking officials briefed U.S. President Barack Obama, and while the pirates were preparing to contact authorities, Jessica Buchanan was already a top priority at the White House.
Isn't it incredible how quickly that escalates? Like, within 24 hours, it's already, been briefed to the President of the United States. Like, the speed of that is crazy.
Paul Thisted later recounted that the best thing that could have happened to him was to be kidnapped with an American.
Yeah.
Both hostages and pirates were soon to find out what that meant. Almost 3 months later, Jessica was still in captivity. Good news was that she was still alive. Bad news was that despite slow negotiations, no agreement could be made for a ransom, as the pirates had even refused $1.5 million, enough money that each of them would be set up for at least 30 years. Every day, Jessica fought hunger, heat, and the constant fear that the kidnappers would harm her. As if all of that wasn't bad enough, a urinary tract infection had spread through her body, and in the worst-case scenario, it could be fatal.
Oh my God. Talk about make it worse. How's that happened at the same time? I mean, if you're getting pushed about and you're struggling because you don't want to pee yourself, or it's the whole idea of being a hostage is really quite horrific in many ways, isn't it?
In a final video message to Western authorities, she joined Paul in begging for their lives and a quick payment of the ransom. Otherwise, she would either die from her infection or fall victim to the whims of pirates drugged with khat.
Oh my God.
That night, Jessica gazed up at the brightly lit starry sky and prayed. Unbeknownst to her, her prayers were answered when 10,000 miles away, 24 cell phones suddenly rang. The men picking up the phones had long beards and were covered with tattoos.
Not that matters. Had long beards and were covered with tattoos. Cool.
Some of them had the stature of a bear, while others looked like hardened marathon runners.
I feel like this guy has got the hots for the for the seals. They were tatted up, had beards. Some of them looked like bears.
But they all had one thing in common. their aura of absolute calm, self-confidence, and professionalism.
There were SEALs.
They were all part of the famous SEAL Team 6, who had just been alerted for a hostage rescue. Over the next few weeks, SEAL Team 6's Blue Squadron trained day and night to rescue Jessica, her pleading voice from the video message always in the back of their minds.
So it was weeks that she was captured. Oh my God.
The warriors had hunted gruesome men all over the world, but when it came to the lives of women and children, they were especially motivated. On January 25, 2012, the time had finally come. President Obama himself had given the green light for the hostage rescue. 24 of the best warriors the U.S. had to offer would risk their lives to try to free both hostages unharmed. Their plan was to parachute over Somalia and then approach the pirate camp on foot so as not to alert the enemy with loud noises.
Holy, can you imagine the adrenaline on that mission? Whoo!
At the U.S. operations base in Djibouti, around 500
Djibouti.
miles from Jessica's location, everything military related which was useful in some way was
Don't know why that word, that name's amazing. Djibouti. Djibouti. I just love that name. Djibouti.
gathered. At this point, the total operation cost was already well over $100 million. That was how much America was willing to
Jeesh.
spend to save just one citizen.
Good on him.
With final preparations completed, the SEALs boarded their C-130 transport aircraft and took off for Mogadishu. Remarkably, the pilots themselves had only just arrived and had been on a 9-hour flight right before, but performed their job just like business as usual.
Wow.
All eyes, including those of the president, who was monitoring the operation via live feed, were now on the hostage rescue.
That picture was from when they got what's he called? Osama bin Laden, though, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
As it turned out later, the kidnappers wanted to change their position on exactly this night, but had eaten spoiled meat and therefore ended up staying put.
Oh,
On the other side, however, a violent solar storm erupted, which hit the Earth's magnetic field so hard that radio waves, and thus radio communications with other support units, were disrupted.
that's nasty.
Meaning, in a worst-case scenario, no quick reaction force, no situation reports, and no close air support.
And like I've said in plenty of videos in the past, we know how important comms are and information are during a time like this. Whew.
On top of that, wind speeds were more than double what would have canceled a regular mission. But the rescue of Jessica Buchanan was not a regular mission, and every one of the 24 men on board was willing to take that extra risk. After about 3 hours in the air, the C-130 had reached their drop point. The SEALs rose from their seats, hooked up their oxygen tanks, and then dropped from more than 20,000 feet into the 40-knot wind. After only a few
Jeez.
seconds of free fall, the operators had already reached 120 miles per hour, a speed which
Holy.
is normally achieved by competitive athletes in optimal conditions. Despite the absurd wind situation, the SEALs managed to land semi-cohesively, with a few runaways who were dragged across the savannah for hundreds of yards before separating from the parachute.
Ugh.
Holding security for each other, the sailors put on their combat gear and wrapped up their chutes. From now on, they had to walk several miles through the more than 100-degree hot Somali night.
They should make a movie about this. It's like the perfect story for a movie, isn't it? Like the whole thing. Holy, like the professionalism of special forces. It's just like unrivaled, isn't it? It's just mental what they're capable of.
After nearly an hour of silent marching, the sailors reached their last cover before irreversibly committing to the assault. They were now only 500 meters from the pirate camp. Along the way, they had changed direction several times to always have the wind in their faces,
Yeah.
eliminating any possibility of being spotted early. Every little detail counted when it came to sneaking as close as possible to the enemy. A hostage rescue differs from normal combat mission in that the hostage's life is even more important than fighting the enemy.
Yeah.
The SEALs would literally run through machine gun fire if it meant they could save Jessica. Their goal was to remain
So we didn't mention that he said that some of the SEALs landed in a different place. Did they all regroup? Did they all manage to regroup then? They must have, right? They must have done. Because it didn't mention about any of them specifically going missing.
Undetected for as long as possible, then speed was of the essence. As the 24 warriors began to move again, the longest hour of their lives was about to begin. They had long been within earshot of the pirates, and only night's darkness kept them from the attention of enemy guards. As if in slow motion, one foot was silently placed forward, the weight shifted, and only then followed the next foot. An experienced SEAL named Justin Sheffield led the group. At his hand signal,
I feel like that was a really weird thing to say.
weight shifted, and only then followed the next foot. An experienced SEAL named Justin Sheffield led the group.
Okay.
At his hand signal, the operators spread out far to the left and right
My presumption is he's now not a SEAL, and hence why they're saying his name.
to bring as many rifles forward as possible without walking into others' field of fire.
Yeah.
Snipers positioned themselves on the outer flanks and monitored their comrades' actions. As the sailors moved forward in perfect unison, they could watch through their thermal scopes as the enemy sentries slowly became anxious and woke the other pirates. The SEALs quickened their pace, still perfectly steady. Sheffield aimed his laser at one of the Somali guards, and without having to say anything, his comrades did the same.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. It should be like I don't know. It should be like a movie or like a mission in a video game or something. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? My presumption is they all got out safe. That's why they're able to make this video. Oh, maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't.
The red beam was completely invisible to the pirates without night vision.
Yeah.
But they sensed something moving in the darkness. With a loud clack, they racked their heavy PKM machine guns and got into position. The pirates pointed their weapons roughly in the direction from which they heard the sounds. The SEALs increased their pace once again, now less concerned with noise discipline than with closing the distance to the hostages before all hell broke loose.
Nice.
With a deafening noise, the pirates' machine gun kicked off and fired deadly 7.62 millimeter rounds at the operators.
It makes me... I kind of wish there was a video where it showed the terrain of where they were coming from and all this other stuff, and you're never going to get that, are you? But, like, for me, when I always think about, like, approaching kind of like a space that is being guarded, and we've obviously gone through all this when I was in Royal Marines training, is there certain like techniques you do, and I said this in one of my previous videos about flanking and stuff like that, but there's certain like maneuvers you can do to kind of get around things and move things around whilst also not being in the line of fire of your oppos, right? And it makes me want like a down top kind of video of like, here's where they were. You're not going to get that, are you? But it would be nice, wouldn't it?
Followed by several AK-47 assault rifles. The snipers had been waiting for just this moment and almost immediately silenced the enemy machine guns before seeking new targets.
Yeah.
With surgical precision, the Navy SEALs returned fire while simultaneously fighting their way forward to find Jessica. In a similar hostage rescue, French special forces failed to overwhelm the hostiles quickly enough, resulting in the execution of the hostage.
Wow.
Each of the SEALs was prepared to do anything to avoid just that. The hundreds of hours on the shooting range under simulated stress conditions paid off when they spotted two pirates with AKs standing right over Jessica, who was crouched on the ground.
Oh.
Sheffield and another SEAL broke away from the formation, and both made sure these pirates never kidnapped anyone again with accurate shots.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder how they, like, this is obviously telling the story and it's giving a bit of attention. It's actually pretty decent storytelling, isn't it, really, on the pressure of what actually happened. But for me, as someone who was in the military, I want to know, like, were the pirates actually with the hostages? Were the hostages in another room? Were they separated? What was the distance? You know? How many other people were around? Did they eliminate everyone else apart from these two pirates? They're all the information. That's the information I want to know.
When Sheffield saw the American's bright face, he dove on top of her in the ongoing firefight, shielding her from the enemy crossfire with his own body.
Wow.
More SEALs joined in, and within seconds, the teacher was protected by multiple layers of the world's best warriors.
Yeah.
Although the operators themselves all had wives and children, they put the hostage's life above their own.
But that's the name of the game, isn't it? That's the job. That's what you're there to do. I know it's... If you think about it, is one life worth more than another life? Most would say no, right? But that's what they sign up to do. The SEALs, do you know what I mean? SEAL Team 6. And so they know what they're doing and they know what they're putting on the line, right?
Meanwhile, another comrade had taken care of Paul Thisted, protecting him from enemy fire as well. After all 9 pirates were neutralized and the gunfire stopped, Sheffield put Jessica on his shoulders and sprinted out of the pirate camp, as far away from any danger as possible. The other SEALs formed a human shield around the two, ready to resume the fight at any moment. After running as far as his feet would carry him after this energy-sapping battle, Sheffield dropped Jessica off. Pararescue jumpers, the U.S. Air Force's specialized rescue force, tended to the American woman, who still couldn't believe she had just been rescued by her countrymen.
You imagine how quick it was as well? How quick the whole thing went by, and she's probably like still in shock of what the hell just happened. And now all of a sudden she's safe. Like all of a sudden she's like being taken care of. That must be just crazy. She probably need therapy for years to come after that. Jeez.
As she anxiously asked, "What if more come? More could come." Sheffield coldly replied, "We are SEAL Team 6. We will kill anyone who tries to harm you now." She was visibly reassured by that.
Did they actually say that though? I feel like that. If he said that, if I was his mate and he said that, I'd be like, shut up. Like, you're safe, don't worry about it. We're SEAL Team 6. It's like a Marvel movie, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If my mate said that after rescuing a hostage, I'd be like, this fucking guy.
Convincing answer of the bearded warrior who had just rescued her from the worst situation of her life. After the SEALs blew up the pirates' arms depot, they still had to march to the landing zone of the exfiltration helicopter. Whenever a suspicious noise was heard somewhere, or reports of enemies came in over the radio, it took only a few seconds for Jessica to find herself under a layer of Navy SEALs trying to protect her with their own bodies.
Yeah.
Fortunately, however, there was no more fighting, and the American, accompanied by the SEALs, ran independently to the Black Hawk that would fly her to freedom.
Amazing.
Behind her lay 3 months of captivity among heavily armed pirates, during which she could never be sure that she would live to see the next day. The selfless efforts of the men of SEAL Team 6 had finally saved her.
Mental, that, isn't it?
As she reflected on the last few months, one of the soldiers on board knelt beside Jessica, looked her in the eye, handed her a beautifully folded American flag, and said, "Welcome home, Jessica." For those who have made it this far,
Did they?
Thanks for watching.
I feel like there's a lot of cheesiness in this storytelling. It's a great story. Fantastic story. Really well produced with the video. The dialogue's a little cheesy, innit? It's a little cheesy.
If you want to support our work, feel free to leave a like and tell us what you think of the hostage rescue. Should the U.S. government have simply transferred enough ransom so that the hostages were released peacefully?
No, obviously not.
Or was the deployment of SEAL Team 6 just the right thing to do, in keeping with the motto, "We do not negotiate with terrorists"?
Exactly.
Whatever you think, we're eager to hear your opinions.
Great video. I'll leave a link down below to the original video. Make sure you go over there, give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It was a really good video and with some really good information. And I didn't know anything about this hostage rescue until this video, so that's really impressive. I'm out of breath. I'm not very well, guys. I'm going to get some rest. Hopefully tomorrow I'll feel better and we can get some more good videos up. Let me know recommendations down below. Check out Chug in the description. Great video. SEAL Team 6. Absolute nails, aren't they? Absolute nails. Anyways, until next time, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.